experiences. When we think about opportunity knowledge, we think about students having the skills to research the opportunities that are out there, to set goals, to make connections that support their long-term aspirations. Help students to acquire the skills that they need. Insisting on rigor, breaking down barriers, aligning the work, advocating for students. We know that all of our teachers and our administrators are committed to rigor, to breaking down barriers, aligning work, and advocating for students. But what AVID does, it affords the teachers and the administrators at AVID sites, it affords them opportunities to experience high-quality professional development that equips them with strategies and skills to really support these 4 pieces of what educators do so that the students have what they need. So I wanted to speak to student agency just a little bit more before we move on. As you all know, Randolph County School System is heavily invested in the MTSS, the multi-tiered support system work, which encompasses not only the academic pieces, the academic learning needs of students, but also the social and emotional pieces. As a state, North Carolina has embraced the CASEL 5 competencies for SEL. CASEL is an acronym for the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. So AVID has also embraced the CASEL competencies for SEL. So there we have some really nice alignment, which I think is critical when you pursue a particular initiative across your schools. So the 5 core competencies, as you can see, self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. So how do they connect to what AVID does? In terms of self-awareness, AVID students perform goal-setting exercises, as well as self-inventories on their learning styles, and self-identify their personal priorities. In self-management, they learn a lot of key organizational skills, focused note-taking, information and time management. Social awarenesses, the AVID classes are structured to empower students to advocate on behalf of themselves and to navigate and influence their environment. With the relationship skills, they have opportunities to develop their skills in order to effectively communicate and collaborate. And with the responsible decision-making, there is a strong emphasis on inquiry with AVID, and they can explore issues more deeply in order to make a more thoughtful approach to challenges that are presented to them. So the social emotional piece is really critical, and it's very nicely aligned with our focus in the Randolph County School System on MTSS and specifically social and emotional learning. This is a quote from an AVID superintendent, and the purpose of sharing this quote was just to remind you all that while yes, there's a huge academic emphasis with AVID, there's also the career emphasis as well, better preparing students to enter the local industries, as this one particular superintendent references. So it's about college and career readiness. So for months now, we've been having conversations about this possibility, and what we have realized is that AVID really is directly aligned and does support the big picture work in curriculum and instruction and across the district. So this graphic just represents the things that we have on our plate, wonderful, exciting opportunities across our school district, and we think AVID is a piece of the how. How do we accomplish this work? You can see some of the text and the research, reflective of the research that we've been studying for several years across central services, our school districts as well, and in particular, the Leading the Rebound work that Ms. Waddell's been leading with our curriculum team and then across the district with our principals. And this is how to rebound after and throughout the course of a global pandemic, focusing on how we can really accelerate kids as well as doing interventions that are needed along the way. So at the heart of AVID, there are some very specific evidence-based strategies. AVID's not a program. AVID's a belief system, and it's rooted in these evidence-based strategies that support, integrate, and complement the daily instruction that takes place across our schools. As I said, these are evidence-based. This means they are proven strategies that do work. And you can see there are 5 areas: writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading, as we refer to these as the WICOR strategies in AVID. So just a quick glimpse into each of the 5 strategies. And what you'll notice is for each of the 5 strategies, you'll see some examples of evidence-based strategies. And some of these, I'm sure you have seen in our schools, and you've seen our teachers using. So these are not necessarily new and above and beyond and another layer. A lot of these are strategies that we've been using with our students, but this helps us to use them in an intentional, focused way. On the right, you'll see comments from teachers, and I think these comments are very telling of what these strategies, when they are in place, can do. So when you look at the writing strategies like note-taking, learning logs, quick writes, and reflections, what really stands out to me is when the one teacher comments about how it helps students to experience how to integrate writing across subject areas. And this is not always an easy task. When you look at inquiry, you see strategies such as questioning techniques, Costa's levels of thinking, Socratic seminars. Costa's levels of thinking are very complementary of our work that we do with Revised Bloom's taxonomy, Webb's depth of knowledge, Sandra Kaplan's depth and complexity that we talk a lot about in the gifted arena. So with the inquiry piece, students really learn how to lead discussions, to be able to dig into rich text, and to cite evidence from these texts. Collaboration is one that I think is really critical and very closely aligned to social and emotional learning. You can see some of the sample strategies, and when you look at the comments from the teachers, you see words like increase their confidence, or phrases, increase their confidence, communicating with each other. These are really big pieces for social and emotional learning. Organization. There's a formal system for organization. It's not random with AVID. There are binders, there are calendars, planners, agendas, graphic organizers, focused note-taking systems, setting SMART goals for themselves. So the organizational skills really do to really help the students to not only organize themselves, but also to be able to follow routines, to stay on task, and to stay focused. With reading, what's really important here is that they really hone their critical reading skills. They have an ability to really dive deep into text. Also, there's a strong focus on vocabulary, particularly academic vocabulary, which is something that we focus on a lot. The skill of summarizing, which is one of those basic, highest impact strategies. If we can teach students how to summarize, we're definitely on the right path. So when you look at the reading, it of course impacts reading comprehension and helps students to learn how to ask higher level questions and so forth. With that, those are somewhat, as I consider to be the what you do with AVID, some of the strategies. So when you start to look at the how, we'll talk just briefly about the 2 different levels of AVID. At the secondary level, middle and high school, there are 2 components to AVID. One is an AVID Elective class where students do make applications which are reviewed based on the traditional AVID Elective student profile criteria. Now these aren't etched in stone, but they give some very good guidance into your selection for students for an AVID Elective class in grades 6 through 12. Generally, these students may be the first in their family to attend college, average to high test scores, GPAs of 2.0 to 3.0, kids who definitely show that college potential if they could just get that support that's needed, the AVID strategies will give them. and then a very strong individual desire and determination. So you have the AVID Elective, and then you have the AVID school-wide piece, and this is where all students have the opportunity to be exposed to the AVID, particularly like the WIC or strategies, where all staff can be trained in those particular strategies. Just a little bit of data. 93% of AVID students tend to complete four-year college entrance requirements. And one thing that I think is really impressive about AVID is this persistence data piece. And what AVID has done and continues to do is they look at the persistent gaps. They actually followed the AVID seniors across the country into college and into their careers. And what they look at is this persistence gap of when a student enrolls in a first semester college semester and then continues to persist into a second semester. And there's some pretty significant data along the way that 85% of 31,469 AVID seniors in 2017 persisted. They not only got to college, they stayed in college. First generation lower income AVID alumni who go to college are 4 times more likely to graduate than their national peers. So the key to this is that AVID students learn these skills and these strategies. They experience these learning environments that support them and prepare them, and they transfer these skills with them when they go to college. A sample week in the AVID elective class looks something like this, with some flexibility always, but we do have our block schedules. So 2 days are devoted to AVID curriculum. Sometimes they are Mondays and Wednesdays, and those are your WIC or strategies. 2 days are devoted to tutorials. And I really want to stress to you board members that AVID is not about remediating kids. AVID is about accelerating kids. And I think that's so powerful and so exciting. The tutorials are elemental to student success. These are not opportunities for kids to just come to the AVID elective class and sit down and work on their homework. These are very structured tutorial experiences where tutors are trained, students are trained in how to have and how to facilitate and how to have conversations around questions that students bring to the tutorial. They have to come prepared to the tutorial, and they explore questions from typically AP honors level classes that they're enrolled in. And through the training that they receive in the elective class, they learn how to facilitate these conversations where getting the right answer is not necessarily the end goal, but learning the skills, the thinking processes that are involved, that they can then transfer back to that AP biology or honors biology class when they run into another challenge. It really helps and equips them to be able to be successful. So again, it's about accelerating students, not remediating them. Fridays are typically days for binder evaluations and so forth. This is the extracurricular piece, but it's intentional extracurricular pieces with field trips, motivational speakers, college visits, etc. So again, this is just a sample of what AVID might look like in a secondary school each week. Now we know that we do not wait until 6th through 12th grades to talk about college and careers. We start these conversations in elementary school. In recent years, AVID has expanded to elementary. And what happens with the AVID Elementary is that it sets a foundation for college and career readiness through the use of primarily the WIC or strategies. Now, what distinguishes AVID Elementary from AVID Secondary? Because you might be sitting there thinking, okay, an elective class like this in an elementary school. That's not what AVID does at the elementary level. You see the same strategies, the WIC or strategies, the growth mindset piece, and the organizational pieces, etc., introductions to college and career thinking. But what happens is, in K-5 classrooms with AVID, it's embedded into daily instruction. in the AVID classroom. So again, same thing, focus on student success skills, WIC-OR lessons, organizational skills, partnerships, etc. But this happens through their core class. Again, AVID is a philosophy, it's a belief, it's not a curriculum. It does not take the place of other initiatives and the curriculum that's happening in the classroom. It's there to complement it and to support it. It's strategies for them to integrate. This is a picture of an AVID classroom, and you can see 5 very distinct things. The teacher is the facilitator of the learning. There's a college and career readiness environment. It's so exciting to go into an AVID school. When you walk into an AVID school, you instantly know that this is a college and career preparatory type experience. You see the banners, the pennants, and so forth. Inquiry-based activities, higher level thinking, reading and writing to learn. So for months, as we've shared, we have been thinking about and exploring this possibility. And after talking with our central service groups of folks, with administrators, teachers, and some principals and so forth, we do believe that AVID is a piece of the how we can approach all of the initiatives and the work that we have going on across the Randolph County school system. So again, AVID's about providing opportunities, closing the opportunity gap for students and preparing them to be both college and career ready. So when we think specifically about how to launch AVID across the Randolph County school system, we have identified 6 schools from 2 feeder patterns where we would like to initially begin working and implementing AVID. 4th and 5th grades at Ramster Elementary, 6th through 8th at Southeast Randolph Middle School, 9th through 12th at Eastern Randolph High School, 4th grade at Randleman Elementary, 5th through 8th grades at Randleman Middle School, and 9th through 12th grades at Randleman High School. Now, when we think about why these particular schools, we think about really about 10, 12 years ago, we think about there was a presence of AVID actually in the Randolph County school system across our middle schools through a grant that was in place at that time. And to this day, when I'm out and about talking with staff, administrators, lead teachers at both of the middle schools that have been identified here, I get questions about, do you think we'd ever have AVID again? We really loved AVID. We did such great things with it. And so there was a strong presence of AVID across the middle schools. And at the time, Mr. Hamilton, who's the principal now at Randleman High School, was the principal at Randleman Middle School. Ms. Ritchie, who's the principal currently at Randleman Middle School, was involved with AVID in the Asheboro City schools. One of her APs, Mr. Shoptall, was an AVID elective teacher in Asheboro City schools. Dr. Chappell, the principal at Eastern Randolph High School, was a teacher at SERMS at the time of AVID. The lead teacher, Ms. Steele at SERMS, who is still there, was affiliated with AVID and trained and always interested in and excited about a possibility of seeing AVID return at some point in time. And our own Dr. David Cross was actually one of the first AVID elective teachers at Randleman Middle School several years ago. These 2 feeder patterns also share similar demographics. So we have identified them as the 6 schools where we would like to begin implementing AVID. Our funding, the startup cost is around $80,000. The funding sources would be elementary and secondary school emergency relief, the ESSER dollars, as well as the Elementary and Secondary School Act Title IV, Student Support and Academic Enrichment. Year 1 is more costly because you have initial startup costs, some training involved, some purchasing of AVID libraries and so forth. When you look at year 2, based on quotes that we've received, you're looking at almost a 2/3 reduction in cost the second year, And by year 3, you're looking at a 75% reduction in cost. So the cost does tend to go down after you have made it across that initial starting point and so forth. What is very impressive, I think, about the planning behind implementing AVID in the Randolph County school system is there's already an identified sustainability plan beyond the ESSER funding, with other dollars that would support sustaining these 6 schools and also the possibility of additional schools as well. So I thank you for this opportunity to share this information with you, and I'm happy to try to address any questions that you might have this afternoon. And if I am not sure, I'll certainly do some homework and get back to you.
And I was sitting here listening to it, I said, dang, it sounds familiar. When you said that, I said, I remember about Toddler Members, when we first got on the board, we were doing some of it then.
I spoke to a couple of students who went through the program, and they who now have graduated college and all that, and everything you said, they pretty much have echoed it, just with a lot of smiles and happiness about it, of course. But I'm kind of curious. So, do you have? Is it a for elective for the 612? I guess is it an elective where, like in high school, would it be one elective where you'd have 9th through 12th all in the same class, or is it a couple classes? How's that?
That's a great question, Mr. Burgess. That the way it works at the high school generally is it is taught during an elective class, and it's one per grade level. So we're planning to start at 9th grade and then add 10th, 11th, and 12th. And through the years, AVID has become very creative in working with high schools. Sometimes you pair AVID with one of the core content classes like English or a social studies or a science class. So it's 45 minutes with the content and 45 minutes of supporting the content. It's called AVID on the Skinny. With all of the online opportunities, the virtual opportunities now, I know Chatham County's doing some work with pairing AVID with some of their online opportunities that are happening across their schools and some of the community college courses. So there's some flexibility there, but yes, it is taught as an elective class during the school day. At the middle school level, just FYI, it can be taught as an elective class. But what I think is really exciting in the Randolph County school system is that each of our middle schools have an enrichment remediation block. And so there's some really nice potential there, I think, for the AVID class to occur during that time period, with, of course, the option to, at times, if students do need some, more intensive remediation interventions, that type thing. Because what that helps with, in my experiences with it at the middle school level, is children do not have to choose. They don't have to choose between like a band and a chorus, that type thing. Because sometimes that can be really difficult for them. So I think there's some really nice opportunities at both middle and high school.
So do you have, do you have like one teacher at the high school, or you have 2, 3 teachers that do this, or how does that work?
It varies. Some high schools, I've seen one teacher who loops for 4 years with a particular group, and that's very powerful. Generally, you will have one per grade level, but again, a lot of it depends on how you structure it into your master schedule.
So is that something that we would be able to do as far as in the high school level, hire 4 new teachers for this, or is it something that we're going to use existing staff for?
Generally, you use your existing staff. It's not necessary to hire staff, particularly like if you pair it with a core class, like an AVID on, like what they call AVID on the Skinny, or if you pair it with something like a virtual experience. So it tends not to be additional personnel cost.
You could take someone's English 1 class and instead of running the semester, run it across the whole year, 45 minutes like we do before block. The other half of the 45 minutes would be the AVID instruction. one way you could do it.
My question is, somebody can answer this, why did we get away from it 10 years ago?
I was not here.
Oh, I know, that's why I say if somebody could answer it. I mean, I know a lot of people wasn't here
It was just the
then.
expiration of a grant and the dollars without, without sustainability.
Yeah, I know it was going away.
I don't remember.
I think it was the
That's why I
expiration.
said, if anybody could answer, cause when we started going through it, I remember it, cause I think my daughter actually had some dealings with it, and
It was a grant that expired the summer I came in the door. It
I
expired
think that might have
at the
been
end
what
of
it was.
12-13.
Yeah, it was a funding issue, but I believe the plan was, that at that point, having the knowledge, we were gonna try to continue the practice of it, even though, we couldn't really afford the cost of actually being an official AVID school.
And before, when it was in Randolph County, was it just in high schools then?
No, it's middle school.
You had it in the middle schools and.
Is there additional tutorial help? When I was reading there bi-weekly, is that the same teacher, like if somebody's struggling, is there additional help? Is that gonna be the same teacher, or you do it after school, before school? How's that work?
It happens during the AVID Elective class time, and
So you get one-on-one?
there are multiple sources of tutors, if you will. Certainly, the AVID Elective teacher is trained in how to facilitate the tutorial.
Because she would be doing the class, or he,
Well, ideally, what happens is students come to the tutorial prepared. That's an expectation. And they bring with them what they call a problem of the day, which is a challenging question that they have crafted based on a concept or a topic in like an honors science class, for example, something they're struggling with. And that's where they use those COSTAS levels of thinking. They learn how to develop level 1, 2, and 3 questions. And the expectation is you always come in with at least a level 2 question to the tutorial. When students arrive, the elective teachers are trained to very quickly organize them into small groups. Generally, they might be at a dry erase board. You might provide some little dry erase boards, chart paper. And again, the elective teacher trains the students how to ask questions and how to facilitate conversations. So the groups of students, the tutorials are running all at once. You can train college students to be tutors. You can utilize other staff members. You can use seniors and juniors to work with freshmen and sophomores. There's different sources, but ideally there's one tutor per group, and usually you'll have like your students with their science questions grouped together, students with their English questions grouped together, and so forth. And again, while yes, getting a correct answer is important, it's not so much about the right answer, but it's about helping them to learn those thinking skills and those processes that they go through. They oftentimes have highlighters. They go back to their notes where they have, as we said, touched their notes multiple times prior to the tutorial and prior to an assessment in a classroom, where they have looked at their notes and what they've learned. And they learn how to ask each other questions. So it's great, communication, collaboration skills. And then the goal is to transfer those skills then back into the content class so that when they encounter the next challenging concept or topic, they can go, oh, I remember how we worked our way through that during the tutorial part in the AVID Elective class. So again, this is about accelerating learning. Very much about accelerating.
it sounds great, but it almost sounds like we need a separate teacher. I mean, it sounds, I know you said we can use one we got, but that sounds like if we're gonna do it the
We're just
right
going to be
way.
dedicated.
Yeah, somebody, if we're gonna do it the right way, we almost need someone
That's
like
something we'll work on.
dedicated to the cause.
We'll work on that administratively moving
Yeah.
forward. Once we get going,
I
we'll
think-
know what our needs are.
Well, if this went away years ago,
But it's a few years ago.
I was gonna keep it here when we started again.
Well, at this point, there is a sustainability plan in place. beyond the ESSER dollars, which are a significant part of helping with the startup cost, that has been identified to sustain the annual fees and additional training for certain, for staff members along the way. So I think that is a real positive here, that the thinking is beyond the first 2 or 3 years in terms of the funding.
So startup was 80,000? What was that, what's the annual fee again?
The annual fee per school usually runs, it's a little different for secondary and elementary. For secondary, it's around $4,000 a year, and for elementary, it's around $3,100 a year. And after that first year of training and purchasing what they call the AVID libraries, training the district personnel who will oversee the program, there's some required training there. Really, in future years, it's about the fees, the annual fees, and folks, if you want additional people trained. And, once you get past that big push of larger numbers of folks trained those first 2 or 3 years, then in my experience, it's been you don't have as many folks after that who, who need to be trained. So those are the 2 primary costs once you get past those first 2 or 3 years. So it does decrease significantly from the initial, but you do have to have that plan for sustainability.
My thing is, if you could sustain it now, I know back when they had, the more we talk about this, more it clicks in my head when my daughter went through this. Starting in elementary is a great opportunity because it will instill the kids from the beginning. I know back when my daughter did it, in the middle school, it was new. So it was something new, and it was something a little difficult for them to comprehend, especially when they went to the strategies of, organization and planning, but I know some kids who love that. And like you said, when you get to high school, in the middle school, it's more of elective, and the kids who want to do this do it. But if you instill it now in the elementary, it's gonna be a common everyday thing once they move up. It's instilled in them already, where I know 10 years ago or 12 years ago when it started, it was new, and it was hard for some kids to comprehend it. Because I know my daughter had a time with it, but starting at the elementary level, I think would be a great idea.
I'm thrilled about that possibility with AVID Elementary. Prior to my retirement in 2016, my experiences had been with middle and high school. And I do think high school is critical because there is something magical about seeing that graduating group of AVID seniors and just amazing at the scholarships, the college acceptances, and the plans that those students have. And that's where the AVID data really reside in the high school data. But the middle school piece is very, very important as well. But the AVID Elementary piece is even more exciting, I think, just as what you said, Mr. Bowles, just to begin exposing all kids to those strategies. And I've had the opportunity to visit a couple of the elementary schools in Lee County, where AVID's had a strong presence for decades as well. And it is really impressive to talk with those students and to see what the skills and just the language that they use when they talk to you about their futures and the work that they're doing in school. So it's definitely a plus to send those 4th and 5th graders then on to middle school and then, of course, to high school.
Is there incentive for, like we talk about, the teachers to learn to do this? Is there an incentive pay-wise, or just it works within their classes, or?
It's just like, in terms of the professional development, what they get from their professional development complements and strengthens their capacity to teach, just as other, professional learning has done and does throughout their careers. At this point, there's typically not additional funding for teaching an AVID class necessarily, but I will say this, I don't know that I've ever experienced or known a person who has been interested in and pursued AVID training who did not just fall in love with it, and we're just very deeply committed to it. So that's usually not an issue.
I know you, I'm sure you said this, but sometimes I have to be told something a couple of times before I get it. So on the elementary level, and you showed the picture of the AVID classroom, is it like one fourth grade class is an AVID classroom, or is it a pull-out type thing? Or
No, it would, I'm sorry, it would be all fourth grade classes and all fifth grade classes.
Oh,
The
it's
four
all the
teachers
classes.
would
Okay.
receive training
All right.
in the WIFOR strategies.
All right, so
that
it's
they
not
can
just
get.
one classroom of the
Right.
fourth graders?
It would be
Okay.
an opportunity for all the students. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Mr. Bowles, it was a 21st century grant that did it the first time.
Yeah, once we got talking about it, it started clicking.
And it ran out, or it ended at 12:13.
Disappeared. Disappeared.
Good afternoon. I am here today to talk about Cognia. I know that Ms. Waddell has been here a couple times. We've had to postpone Cognia, so you all have a little bit of an understanding or knowledge of where we kind of are in the process, but just wanted to give some updates. We are in the process of engaging in an internal and external review through Cognia, which is formerly Advanced Ed. We last participated in a review in 2016. And I keep stressing to all of our administrators and central services staff, as I've taken on this project, how important accreditation is. Without accreditation, our students lose access to scholarships, post-secondary education opportunities, military programs. Many things require you to graduate from an accredited institution. So this is all about students as well, or it is all about students. As part of that process, we have a multi-step kind of thing in terms of how the accreditation happens. And I made sure I wrote in the memo that our dates are March 13th through 16th. So and I know we've given those out before, but those are something to pencil in on a calendar because they're important. Our review is virtual. Virtual is new for Cognia, so it'll be new for us too. No one has truly experienced what that virtual review is like. So during the virtual review visit, a team of trained administrators and educators from other institutions will visit us virtually through Zoom. In preparation for that, we will pull together and do an internal review before they get here. And that is what we're engaged in right now. So two parts to the accreditation: the internal review. Using a school system worksheet, we are currently rating ourselves as a district team here at the central office. And then at the school level, each school has a school worksheet where they're rating themselves as well. Then after we finish rating ourselves, we're gathering evidences, which is where we are in the process now as well, to upload into a Cognia workspace for the accreditation review team to review, and then they will give us feedback. So the components of the review, there are the performance standards ratings, which are based on continuous improvement, the evidences. We have also been deploying Cognia surveys to our stakeholders. We have deployed a climate and culture survey to students, staff, teachers, parents. And we are currently in the process of deploying a student engagement survey to just students, grades 3 to 12. After we compile all that data from the surveys, we get all the evidence, we rate it ourselves, the Cognia team will come here, they will look through all that evidence, and then they will conduct interviews. If you're part of that process before, remember we all would come into here in the boardroom, and they would have a focus group with you all, and they'd have a focus group with principals, they would talk to the superintendent. All that's going to happen just in a virtual process this time. So we'll do it via Zoom, we'll have those conversations. Those interviews, I think, are probably the most important part of this process because we can give them stuff all day, but it's all about, those interviews are how they're going to know what's going on here. The process, I keep telling people to think of it, it is not a gotcha. It's an opportunity to learn. It is about continuous improvement. It's how can we be better? What are we doing good? They're gonna look for things that we're doing well. And this is not a we have a perfect situation. I keep telling all the team members, whether they're school or based here at Central Services, don't give yourself all fours. We're not all perfect. And what I found, we aren't giving ourselves all fours, we're harder on ourselves as educators than the team probably will be. But I'd rather rank myself low and give more evidence and say, oh, I'm really doing a better job than I am, than to say, hey, we're perfect, and not have the evidence to back it up. Based on those continuous improvement standards I talked about, those performance standards, they're divided into 3 capacities. There's a leadership capacity, a learning capacity, and a resource capacity. Leadership relates to strategic planning involving stakeholders in continuous improvement, adhering to policies and ethics, feedback from stakeholder groups, and how you're making data-driven decisions. The leadership capacity is a lot about you all. There's a lot on there about our board policies, how our Board of Education runs, ethics, those type of things. The learning capacity switches to learners. What are we doing as a culture? What processes do we have with curriculum alignment? How do we monitor those processes? And then resources is all about concepts of human capital and financial capital. So how are we doing professional learning, induction for new employees and teachers, mentoring, allocations. There's a huge portion of that that's on digital resources. What's the equity and alignment between how resources are allocated? So when the review team comes, they look at our evidences to decide where we fall on this rubric, and the I3 rubric. And I give it to you today to kind of show you how you can be a 1 or a 5. 1 is engagement, like we're just starting out. And there are some things we're just starting out. Mr. just talked about AVID. I don't think I could rate myself as a 4 or 5 about AVID, but hey, we have done the research, we're implementing this. This might be somewhere where I have evidence of engagement. All the way up to implementation, we're working on it, we've started that PD. Results, we've looked at results, how can we make some changes? Sustainability, we've had this program and we are looking at results over a longitudinal amount of time. And embeddedness, very hard word to say. It's all about, again, those interviews I just talked about. How can you talk about it? Our staff, I give the example, my children are students at Southmont. Southmont students are ready, responsible, and respectful. I'm a parent and I can say those things. And those are things that would come out of an interview, right? I might not have a piece of paper that shows that, or maybe I do, but hearing students say those things, and parents say those things, and teachers and administrators, that's where that embeddedness comes in, and those are the things that will probably more than likely pick up through interviews. This is the performance standards worksheet for the school system. I wanted to kind of give you an idea of how we're looking and using that I3 rubric as we self-evaluate. So you can see the concept scale here, and they give you a 1, 2, 3, 4. In terms of all staff use documented standard operating procedures, and this is just an example. Do we have little or no information? Do we have some information and we engage in this activity minimally? We have high quality information, or we partially engage, or then we have multiple sources. So at this point in time, all of the schools and the district team have completed a worksheet and rated themselves on all of the performance standards in that I3 rubric. The rubric kind of goes down the side. You can see engage, implement, sustain, embed, and what that looks like at each level. They're also, at this point in time, one of the things after they give themselves a rating is saying, how do we know that? If you were here during our previous review, we gave them lots and lots of documentation. There were notebooks and notebooks for every standard. Cognia doesn't want this stuff this time. The process has really changed. It's all about, how can you show me what you're doing right now? Yes, it's embedded, and here's how I know. Not, here's 5 years worth of agendas that about nothing, they probably really care, it's just a piece of paper. The real work's what happens in those meetings, right? So they don't want the stuff, they want to see that you're really doing these things, and how can you show them that? So the teams were making notes as they rated themselves, and the schools were also making those notes. And now we're going back and looking for evidences. All the schools have a Google Drive folder that they're putting evidences in after they've rated them, and we're doing that as well here at the central office. Kind of where are we now? We've completed the performance standards worksheet self-assessments at the district and school level. District and school teams are in the process of gathering evidences. We hope for the most part those evidences are pulled together the first week of December or so. We have deployed those climate and culture surveys. Those were deployed October 12th through the 31st to parents, students, teachers, and staff. And we have our student engagement survey, which is open now. The student engagement survey takes the place in the previous advanced accreditation. The team would come in and they would pick certain schools and do observations. So go into your very short 20, 25 minutes, they're in the room and they're doing an observation and picking up student engagement from the observation. Well, this visit is virtual, so instead of coming here to do those observations, they're going to use the data from the student engagement surveys to kind of gauge how student engagement looks in our district. We need your help too. Part of that responsibility is knowing the cognitive performance standards, and I did run everybody a copy today. Don't tell Todd. Printed them.
You didn't hear that.
I did because I think it's better to have them printed off. When you try to read them online, it doesn't read very well. I bet you, my Mary's behind me probably saying, well, she called me out. And then March 13th through 16th.
Give him the clips.
Yeah, charge to his department.
March 13th through 16th, we will need you all to participate in those virtual interviews. We don't know what that schedule looks like yet. We have a Cognia contact when they come closer to that day. We'll kind of get an idea what the schedule looks like.
Yeah.
It's Sunday? Okay. The 13th?
And I was just in one for UNCG, and my interview was on Sunday. So I don't know if they will be or not, Sheena, but.
At first I had it, I think usually on Sunday, based on the schedule, that Ms. Waddell and I, if we've talked with them, Sundays they'll kind of talk to Dr. Gainey and our team, Dr. Gainey gets to give a presentation, an overview of our district.
Oh, that'd take long enough, we won't do it.
That'll be all day on Sunday.
Y'all be on Monday.
Yeah, maybe Tuesday.
Yeah,
Usually I would say the interviews probably happen Monday, Tuesday, and then we'll get that wrap-up review at the end. Because that is one piece of it, if you look in the memo, at the end of it, they're gonna accredit us. I have full faith that they will. They may make recommendations, they'll tell us things that we're doing good. They always make a presentation and we'll report that we will have to kind of show what the wrap-up for that will be. Just kind of roadmap of kind of where we've been and what's next. We are still continuing to gather evidence. We are administering those student engagement surveys in grades 3 through 12. I'm currently working in the climate and culture data to kind of analyze that, pull it out into sort of reports by school so that our schools can also use that data to evaluate programs, make changes. Our district team does meet monthly right now. Our school teams are meeting probably more than monthly as I've been talking to some of our administrators. Evidences will then be uploaded into a Cognia workspace, which is essentially just a big Google Drive is what I've determined. We will put evidence into folders in their workspace. They will review that, some before they come to us virtually, March 13th through 16th. Questions? I'll try to answer.
Board members, remember, those of you who were here in 16, it's a 5-year accreditation cycle, but remember last year we had a chance to get a waiver for a year, like I think a lot of school systems did because of what was going on. But, so it's really 6 this time, so I'm guessing 2027 will be the next time it occurs. I guess we'll reset on a 5-year after this. So, Mr. Sink, if you hear me say 5 years and you see 16 to 22, you're like, math's wrong, but that's what caused the 6 year. Thank you, Shane.
I give them to? No, just making sure I did.
I was given it, you didn't have it. Oh, that's not what we did. Yeah, roster.
Good evening, board members. Tonight I'm here to present to you the 2019-2020 dropout data, and it's actually quite fitting that I follow accreditation, because when students leave our school system, when they withdraw, accreditation is a part of how we determine if they're a dropout or not, because we have to have proof that when they leave us that they're going to an accredited school or an accredited facility, homeschool, that they have that proper documentation. And if we cannot prove that documentation, they will become a dropout. So it was quite fitting that I followed that, as well as the importance for accreditation. Before I talk about the 2019-2020 dropout data, I do want to just give you a little bit of background. As a previous high school principal and teacher, any dropout is too many. One's too many. But for our school system back in 2008, 2009, we were at 5%, 280 dropouts. At that point, 2008, 2009, we were higher than the state average. Since then, we have been lower than the state average, and we've been improving yearly. And the data that you see in front of you, the 2015-2016 school year is the first school year we dropped below 100, so that was a great milestone. And then, as you will see, in 2018 and 2019, it was the first school year that we dropped below 1%. So we have been making great grounds due to the efforts and the relationship building that our staff do daily to make relationships and to hopefully engage these students. And also great credits to you for allowing us to have student advocates, because those student advocates are a vital piece of that dropout rate going down. And I know Ms. Wagner is sitting in the audience today as well, so I thank her for her leadership. They do work hard to track our students down. So as a reminder, the 2019-20, we're talking about the dropout data from 2019 to 2020, because they always report dropout data a year behind. So what happens in 2019-2020, if a student dropped in that school year, we have the first 20 days of the 2021 school year to also try to engage those students to get them to enroll with us to hopefully follow their education. So that's a reason sometimes why it's also a year behind. So our data for the 2019-2020 school year for our school system from 7th through 12th grade is at 0.68. The state for that same level is 1.04. In that middle section there, you can see that demographics. We had a total of 52 dropouts reported that year. And the bottom part of that data is the individual high school data. To reflect those 52, we did add URI Ridge now as a high school so that you could see their numbers as well. And the other category is to capture any students that's in the 7th or 8th grade that are not high school students, because the state does have this report for grade 7 through grade 13. So again, for 20, we had 52 dropouts with a 0.68, which is great, great. Very proud of them, and we look forward to seeing that number continue to improve. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Board members, when I was looking at this weekend, and late last week, I guess, and Ms. Wagner appreciates student advocates and what goes on for our kids through the student advocates, through the relationships. I just also want to stress I don't know that it's just one place. You have people, whether it be principals, counselors and teachers and support staff, bus drivers. I think it's all about who can form a relationship with the child that keeps children in school. And so I want to make sure we give credit to everybody, because I think it's a collective effort. We were talking about, way back when we did the bonus, some of the media want to talk about parts about that and how everybody got the same amount and all. And I made a comment, and it's not the exact quote, but something about you better figure out real quick in this business, if you're a superintendent, it takes many more people than just some to run a school system. And the bus drivers are the first ones to see the kids in wee early morning hours of the day, as our buses roll at 5:15 every day. But you just don't know. Is it a nurse dealing with a child with a special health plan, and maybe that child has comfort seeing that nurse when they do every day, or a certain time of week. But I watch it with our administrators. I watch them. One of the things I go and do I go to a home football game at every school on Friday nights, and then once I get to every one of them, then I kind of see which one is, I pick from there. Do that a lot in basketball, do that in spring, not as much on the pattern as high school basketball and football, but get to see that, and I watch the relationships. What I watch is the kids talking to the adults on that school staff while they're in stadiums. That tells the whole story right there. You see them, you would think some kids may not, there are some kids that some people think may not like school, but you watch them go in a stadium or go to a concert and see who they talk to. They talk to the staff. And so I just want to say a big thank you to our staff, because, you know, sports staff, teachers, nurses, counselors, principals, assistant principals, social workers, student advocates, everybody's had their hand in that. And I still believe there's some child that somewhere who, you know, that support staff member in the cafeteria is the most important person in their life. Just like I believe that bus driver, or that they know where they're always going to see the custodian, not just going into class and seeing the teacher. They're going to see a custodian somewhere every day on a certain part of the building, and that custodian is always going to speak to them. And that means stuff to our kids. So Ms. Wagner, thank you for, you know, the constant conversation that's going on between these student advocates and the kids is paramount value. It just can't be replaced. And I'm glad we have that in addition to other positions, because it's just a big resource. So I just wanted to point that out. Thanks, Atlanta, for bringing this, and Ms. Wagner, thank you, and the advocates for y'all's work on this as well, because it's a big reason why these numbers are as low as they are. So board members, the last thing I have for you tonight is our schedule, remaining events for the rest of the school year. Obviously, it decreases as we go. We've got the December 13 meeting. I don't have anything, board members, when you look down, there's some things, I don't know when that, I don't have that date yet for the county commissioner meeting. It's usually not the first meeting of the month, which is where, or the first Monday of the month when they usually meet. The presentations typically are another date. So we'll get that once they turn into the new year. They set their schedule. They set it for January, December. So that's why some of those items are still left as just a month. But you look down, we have some important events, special events. Hopefully we can get back to the retirement dinner May 10 and the employee recognition night May 16. Mr. Saint, I don't know if you've seen that happen. The recognition night happens during the work session time for the May board meeting. That's a neat event. We try to get to the RCC, the CEIC building, or to the auditorium, so we can have more space, because that's a real nice event as well. So hopefully by the time we get to that point, we'll be back with everything in place. So, board members, that's all we have. Is anything from the board for staff? Obviously, I think that appreciate the cognitive presentation, the ACT, SAT presentation, but it seems like AVID might have stole the show today. And we're glad it did, because we want to start rolling down this hill as quick as we can. So, no, we appreciate y'all's presentation, Mr. Casey, today. We're good. If you are good, we're good. And board meeting starts at 6:30.
Yeah.